Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Ducksy Gaming and a new video on the channel going through the gear progression and crafting for my Lightning Strike champion to get the non-crit version, clearing your Atlas, picking up the first two Void Stones, and then I'll give you some ways to be able to scale it from the very basic gear that we're going to go through. Now normally on the crafting videos that I go through, I'll give specific bases to buy, what fractures to buy and how to craft the item, but it looks like quite a few people are following the build, so I'm not going to do that because what it will do is mean the market goes crazy and items that have no reason being expensive are going to be expensive because lots of people are after exactly the same thing. So we're going to do a bit of a lesson on how to work out what items you need, and we're going to go through what you want to search for and how to craft them. And then it means you have an option of maybe 15 to 20 different items that you can buy in one slot rather than just one because it's the one I've gone through in the video. So the main thing about your gear, once you've got Perseverance on and a couple of Ichimonjis, attributes are going to be a massive issue. All you really need to do with your gear is get flat lightning damage, attributes, resistances, and life. Anything else you get is a bonus. So we're going to do a bit of maths first. We need 155 strength and 155 intelligence to run the level 20 wrath and level 20 determination. Champion gets a massive 14 intelligence from its base, and it gets 23 strength. We don't pick up much from the tree, we pick up 30 intelligence and 20 strength. What you can do, and what I recommend you do, is go and buy a unique jewel called Inertia. There should be tons on the market, they're quite a common outcome of corruptions, and all they do is turn dexterity into strength. Essentially, this is going to be your placeholder for a lethal pride jewel. So you're going to slot it here, and it's going to give you around 80 strength. What that gives us now is 44 intelligence and 123 strength. We need 155 of each. We're also going to use a negate amulet. If you use blessed orbs to get your implicit to the maximum, that's 24 strength and 24 intelligence. So this leaves us only needing 8 more strength and 87 intelligence. You're going to have an empty jewel socket in your cluster jewel. What I would do is just buy any jewel that gives 8 strength and 8 intelligence. That's going to satisfy all of your strength requirements, and it's going to leave you with 81 intelligence that you need to make up on your gear. That's really important to know because you don't want to end up getting intelligence on everything because they're suffixes that can be used for other stats. So we now know if you get those jewels and you use this tree and you've got a negate amulet with 24 strength and 24 int, that you don't need any more strength and we need 81 intelligence. What's the next step? So we know that we need intelligence on 2 items. To get damage even further, we want flat lightning damage on rings and amulet. It makes a massive difference. We obviously need to get resistance capped and we want to get some chaos resistance, and obviously we would like life on gear. The best way to craft all these items is to buy fractured bases and then use essences. This way you're guaranteeing 2 mods on each item that are beneficial to the build, then you roll a third and then you're pretty much done. So we're going to go through what sort of items you want to look for, what fractures you want to look for, and what essences to use on them. But as I say, I'm not going to say specifically buy this thing with this fire resistance because then the market goes a bit crazy and people end up getting ripped off. Now this is the gear that I would want to craft to go and just push through all of my Atlas, but it might be a bit more expensive and more currency than what you have. So what you can do once you have your Ichimonjis and your Perseverance is just look at what stats you're missing. So maybe you're missing 40 intelligence and a bit of fire resistance, and just go and search for specific items that just cover those things that you're lacking, buy the items, add them to the build, and then you can push through. If you then feel that you start to struggle maybe in T14s, then you've hopefully had a bit more currency drop and you can revisit the crafting guide and get some more items finished. But I've done a playthrough on a 5-link and just very basic gear, and I was able to get the Atlas clear. With this league, it's going to be more difficult, so I would recommend a 6-link, but don't feel you have to get all these items done to push. You don't, it will just be much more comfortable. So let's start with the amulet. Stats that we want are flat lightning damage, intelligence, resistances, and life. You don't have to get them all in this item, but flat lightning damage has to come from jewelry. The fractures that you can use are intelligence, flat lightning damage, life, all elemental resistances, or any individual resistance. It doesn't have to be tier 1 or tier 2. Tier 3 is absolutely fine. So if we say there are 3 separate tiers for these 5 fractures, that's 15 different fractures that you can buy. So there should be something on the market that you can use. Then essentially you're going to use an essence that adds another stat. So let's say we bought fractured intelligence and we want flat lightning. We're going to roll essences of torment because they give flat lightning. We're then going to roll some essences until we maybe get a resistance and an open prefix, and we're going to craft life. That fulfills all of the 4 stats we need. And you may need to look at different fractures because it might be everyone looks for intelligence ones, but no one looks for a resistance one, or the other way around. So check all the different fractures you can get before making a purchase. You should find one for a reasonable price. If they're all really expensive, then you're going to have to drop down tiers. So let's say you were looking for a T2 roll, look for T3. I wouldn't ever go as low as tier 4 because you're almost just guaranteeing a mediocre mod on an item. So just for the jewelry item, I'm going to give an example of crafting, but then I won't for any of the others because the video is going to go on too long. So we're going to go into Craft of Exile. We're going to go Emulator. We're going to create a new item. It's going to be Jewelry, Amulet. We said we wanted it to be an agate amulet. Item level doesn't really matter. The higher the better, but let's just say 80. And then we are going to say this was Fractured Intelligence. And let's say it was tier 3. We fracture this. And then we said we were going to roll with Essence of Torment until we got a combination of life and resistances, or resistance and an open prefix to craft life. Ideally, we want to be getting non-channeling skills somewhere. So you could forgo life on an amulet and one ring to make sure that you get non-channeling skills. So you're going to go to Essences. You're going to go to Essences of Torment. Just use Shrieking early on. Definitely they're probably going to be too expensive. So we hit it with one here. Shame we're not a crit build. That's a very, very good amulet. We got lightning damage. You could go with that, but I think you really want to try and get a resistance. So here we go. We have fire resistance. We've rolled big life. We've got lightning damage. We've got some increased armor and crit multi. This amulet would actually do for the crit version as well, but it's not what we're going for. So all we will do is save this item. I'm going to come back to it later because I'm going to go through how you actually put your items into POB to work out what you need from your remaining items. But it's as simple as that. That was like 4 or 5 essences. With the fractured item, the item's done. So with the rings, it's a very similar thing. We want to get flat lightning because it gives big damage. You're unlikely to get it fractured, as I say, because T1 and T2 don't roll very often, so we're best off using an essence. So again, we want either fractured intelligence, all resistance, any elemental resistance, or life. And again, you're just going to use the torment essences with one of these other stacks you've already got guaranteed, and then you're going to roll it until you get something like another elemental resistance or life, and then you just craft something else on the ring. So essentially, as long as you don't roll a 6 mod item, every item you craft is going to have 4 mods that are good for your build. I would maybe steer clear of a life fracture because if we're also rolling with an essence that gives a prefix, then it's very likely to fill up the prefixes, which means you won't have any room to craft non-channeling skills. We don't necessarily need life on any of this gear. We can make sure we get big life on all the other items. Obviously, it would be nice to get life, non-channeling skills, intelligence, resistances, flat lightning damage, but it gets very, very expensive. The thing to note about rings is you can't roll essences that give elemental resistances. The essences that give resistances for like your boots, your gloves, your helmet, they just give percentage damage and it's not very good. So again, we want to be using essences of torment on both these rings, and you're going to go and buy, let's say, fractured cold resistance on one ring, fractured fire resistance on the other. You roll with your torment essences until you hit something that you like. If you've got an open prefix, you craft non-channeling skills, and then we're done with those items. I'm going to go through the other items and what stats you want to look for and what fractures you can get. Then I'm going to go into POB and explain really how you want to process upgrading your gear. You want to do it all at the same time. So make sure you've got currency to upgrade all of your gear, because there's nothing worse than doing it a bit at a time than coming back a couple of hours later and not really knowing what you need on the build to get it finished. Now, it goes without saying, but before crafting items, check on trade to see if the items you want with the stats you want are available for a decent price, because it's going to cost you the bases and a few essences, and then maybe some chaos on the crafting bench to get your items finished. So if, for example, you know that on a ring you just want flat lightning damage, 2 resistances and life, put those into trade and see what comes up. It might be that they're 5 to 10 chaos and you can buy them instead of maybe spending 15 to 20 chaos crafting the item. So for your body armor, this one's going to be fairly simple. You're going to have bought either a 5 link or a 6 link, and that is very unlikely to be fractured. So essentially, you just pick an elemental resistance that you need and you roll the essences on the body armor. I personally would go essences of MB to get some chaos resistance, because you do want some in the build. We definitely don't want to be running around with minus 60. So you just use shrieking essences of MB until you hit another resistance and life, or you can craft life onto it. Or if there's no life mods on the body armor, you can use the 15% life mastery to get some life out of a body armor that doesn't have any on it. That's as simple as it is for the body armor. For your helmet, this is actually where I'd recommend getting intelligence, because helmet can naturally roll intelligence. So what I would look for is a fractured intelligence helmet, because it might be that they're not particularly sought after, because it is a popular place to get things like life regen, get your resistances and other stats, and intelligence might not be very sought after. Equally, you could just buy some resistance fractures and roll it with the intelligence essence. And then you're just going to craft life. The helmet is really, really simple. You're going to buy a fractured suffix that's either a resistance or intelligence. You're going to roll either intelligence or resistance essences, and then you just craft life and the helmet is finished. The gloves, I think you definitely want attack speed on gloves that gives a big DPS boost. So either look for a big fracture for attack speed. If they're too expensive, again, look at a resistance. So maybe you say, I need fire, get fractured fire resistance gloves, and you're going to roll these with zeal essences. Now, it may be that you want to get another resistance filling the suffixes up, and it might be quite expensive to do that. But I personally would try and get a third resistance. So by fractured fire, for example, you're going to roll zeal essences to get attack speed. You wait until you hit something like cold or lightning, doesn't really matter the tier, and then you just craft life, and you're left with a decent pair of gloves. And then the last item to go on to is boots. Now, I'm not going to go through crafting the ones to be ailment immune. I will put a guide out for that maybe in the notes of the video, because it's not something that you're going to be able to do until you can buy an Ancestral Vision, and they might cost more than all of your gear combined. So it's not really something to worry about, because you can get Cannot Be Frozen from Pantheon, you can get Reduced Effective Chill, and we can get Reduced Effective Shock from a minor Pantheon. So for your boots, I would 100% recommend buying a fractured pair of movement speed boots, because it just makes them much easier to craft. You can use life, but it means you've then got to craft movement speed on the bench, and you can only go up to like 20 to 24. So what I would do is get a fractured pair of boots. If you have to go 25% movement speed because they're cheap, go for it. And then again, we're just going to go with a resistance essence. So it's either going to be fire, lightning, cold, or chaos. Again, you just roll until you get decent suffixes. You already have your movement speed fractured, and you're going to craft life. This is the way that I will craft all of your gear to get you clearing the Atlas. I would recommend try and do it all at once, but let's say, for example, you just need 40 in to get all your attributes together, then one item will sort that out, and you can maybe look at upgrading it later on. So now we've gone through every piece of gear. I'm going to bring up POB, and I'm going to show you the best way to actually put your build together to make sure you don't end up with a build that's short on resistances or got way too much intelligence. Last thing to note is you can change resistances with Harvest. So if you end up with 150 fire resistance and 20 cold resistance, you can use Harvest to move fire resistance to cold resistance on an item, and it's 500 life force, which at the beginning of the league is not too expensive, but if you plan your build properly on POB when you're upgrading it, you're never going to have this problem. So before we go into POB, I just want to talk about what type of items you want. We're scaling armor and evasion, so it's really, really important that all of your bases are armor and evasion bases. It also helps because we're using a mastery that gives us more spell suppression if we have evasion on all of our gear. This means you satisfy that criteria, and by getting armor and evasion, we're scaling up the auras as much as we can. If you're fairly new at the game and you're not aware of what a good base is and what a bad base is, essentially, as you level up, items have item level requirements that you'll find as you go through the campaign. Normally, the lower the item level requirements, the lower the armor and evasion there is on it. So let's, for example, you were looking for a 5 link and you saw this for much cheaper than any other, a scale doublet. The reason is because it's got 100 armor and 100 evasion. When you go down to one of the higher tier items, if we go General's Brigandine, that rolls up to 450 and 450. That makes a massive difference when we are scaling that with percentage auras. So all you need to do is you can just Google it and say body armors, PoE wiki, it will take you to this page. Then you can go to your armor and evasion bases and look at what you'd be happy with. So for example, you might say, I'm happy with Dragon Scale, General's Brigandine, and Triumphant Laminar. So you search for your 5 or 6 link item. Be aware though, at league start, a 6 link high base is probably going to be double or triple the price of a low 6 link base. So if you are strapped to cash, it's not the end of the world to do it, but you are going to want to upgrade them at some point. And that's what you would do for all of your gear. You would look at what the armor and evasion helmets are, what the boots are, what the gloves are, and just pick the tier that you would want as a minimum, and then you can use any of the other bases going from there. So there's 2 more topics I want to cover off in this video. Firstly, how do you use POB to help you upgrade efficiently? And secondly, what upgrades can you make from this very basic model to then get more damage, more quality of life, and things like that, which we'll go through in a moment. So in terms of upgrading your gear, you want to input your character into POB with obviously the tree, the gear, and the skills that you have. Then what you're going to do is go and take anything out that you want to upgrade. So let's say, for example, I'm on all my league start gear and I want to get rid of everything. I've got my Perseverance belt and I've got my Ichimonji swords. I've put in my inertia jewel. I'm just going to take out all of this gear. And what it's going to do is tell you what your current intelligence is, what your current strength is, and what your current dexterity is. And it's going to tell you what you need to satisfy your requirements. So let's say, for example, we buy an amulet, or we craft an amulet, we add it back in, and it will then tell you the stats. So now I know that my strength is satisfied and intelligence, I need 2 mediocre rolled intelligence items. So once you've got your amulet in, you can then look at what stats you need. So my strength is satisfied, so I need no more strength on any of my items, and I need intelligence on 2. So let's go and add a helmet. So I've got a helmet here that's got intelligence on it. I add that in and it's basically telling me I need 6 more intelligence. This is slightly wrong because I'm still going to need to upgrade Wrath. It's 155 that I need. So I essentially need 10 intelligence on an item. And that's the way you're going to do it. And then you're going to keep an eye on your resistances and say, okay, I'm minus on cold. I don't have any chaos. So you're going to go through, craft your items one by one, add them to the POB, then look at what your next base is. So let's say I've bought my helmet base, done my amulet and done my ring, and I now want to buy my boots base or my ring base. I can look at what I need the most. So here I can see I definitely need some chaos, and my fire and lightning resistance are really short, but all my attribute requirements are sorted. So I know I don't need to worry about rolling attributes on any items. So I could say, right, I need lightning resistance. I'm going to go and look for a pair of boots with fractured movement speed, and I'm going to roll it with lightning resistance essences. Remember, you can change the resistance in Harvest. So if you need lightning resistance, but cold resistance is 20 chaos shorter, you're going to get 500 life force for less than that at the beginning of the league. So you can just move the resistance over to another type. And that's kind of how I'll go about upgrading your build. You're just going to do it bit by bit, item by item. So at the end, you know you've not wasted any attributes. You've not gone like 60 over your intelligence. You've got your resistances balanced and you're ready to go. So we'll go back in. And this is the build as in the POB. Obviously, your gear is going to be different. I don't have an inertia jewel in here because I actually went for attributes on my gear, which was a mistake because it's meant I couldn't roll as much lightning damage as I wanted. So you can see in some of these items, I've just added them in as a custom mod in POB to remind me that I want to be getting lightning damage on all of my jewelry. So at this stage, you should be able to farm comfortably in red maps. So you're going to want to upgrade the build further. So first item, keep an eye on it, Voice of the Storms. It's amazing. It adds so much damage. So if we anoint Arcing Blows, which I believe I have anointed on my amulet, you can see our DPS for our melee is 1 million. If we go and put this amulet on, it goes up to 1.4. So it's a huge damage boost. Next thing I'd look for is a Watcher's Eye to go into your jewel socket where you've currently just got something with a tiny bit of strength and intelligence. So let's go for Watcher's Eye upgrades. These are going to come down in price as the league goes on, but the 3 that you can use are precision damage. You can use lightning damage while affected by Wrath, and the best one by far is lightning penetration while affected by Wrath, but that's probably going to be much more expensive than the others. So I would expect the Wrath damage one to not be very much because it's not amazing, it's increased damage. So if we said we had this Wrath one here with a little bit of increased damage, we add it to the build, it adds a decent chunk of DPS. It's 100k on the melee and probably 150k on the range. So just by adding the Voice of the Storms and the Watcher's Eye, we've got our damage up to 1.4 million. The other thing you can do is obviously roll your Eldritch Implicits on your gear. All you need to do to see what you need for that is go to the upgraded 6 link and it will tell you what you want on each one. So the glove ones, for example, are really big damage because we get lightning exposure, and then we take a mastery here that pushes that exposure up to 18%. Then the last thing I would add in would be a Lethal Pride with double damage. It also gives us strength, so it can replace the inertia jewel. If you're in POB, you want it here, you just go Timeless Jewel, Lethal Pride, want it in acrobatics, filter nodes, make sure it's ticked, otherwise it will put double damage on nodes that you're not selecting. I can see I've already got it set up here to search. And then it'll basically bring all the options. The ones at the top are going to be mega bucks because they're 4 double damage, 3 double damage. We're not picky. We just want 1 double damage. So you would just go down. I mean, you can try 2 if you like. But all I would do is select a section of these. So you just hold shift, copy trade URL, and then you'll open up your web browser and you'll paste it in. and it will just bring you a list of all the watches' eyes for sale, and you can decide whether they're a price that you're happy to go with. And then the only other thing you can do, if we go to the upgraded tree here, is you want to get your cluster jewels up to 3 passives, and personally I would fit 2 cluster jewels in. Once you get to like level 95 to 97, you're going to be able to fit in 2 clusters. You might need to drop some nodes here and there to fit them in, but they are good damage. After that, I probably wouldn't push this version anymore because I think we're going to want to scale the crit version, which is Claw and Shield. I'm still working on an end game POB for that build. I did put one in the video description, but that's more of a basic crit setup. There's lots more you can do to get damage out of the build, but it does get more expensive. But it's something I do want to look into because I do want to push the damage more than the POB currently has. That is kind of it for the video. It's probably not the video people were expecting, but I really didn't want to say this is the item you buy, this is how you craft it, because if lots of people follow it, it just massively increases the price of these items that really have no right being that price. It's just because people are following builds to the letter. I'd rather people use their own judgment, their own common sense, and work out what items they need, what fractures they want, and what essences they want to use. That's it for the video. I think that's probably it before League Start. I need a break from this game and making videos. I'll be streaming League Start live on Twitch, so if people want to drop by, great. I'll see people on Friday, and I hope you'll have a good League Start.